Let's talk about how GIS information is organized. One way that we can think about GIS is that each type of thing that we want to put on a map is organized as an individual layer. So for example, in the example shown here, all of the roads would be on one layer. All of the land use, such as whether it's farming land or other types of land, would be on another layer, and so forth. The nice thing about organizing things in this way is that we can just simply turn them on or off. If we want to put roads on our map, we can. If we want to leave them off, we just check off that layer and it no longer appears. Each of these layers, however, is represented with a different type of data model. There's two different data models. The first one is called the vector data model, and vector data models can represent things that are shown as either points, lines, or polygons. A point would be one individual location, like a fire hydrant, and all we would need to know then is its location on the earth, maybe by an x and y coordinate. If we want to draw a line, what we do is draw a series of straight line segments, such as it's shown in the middle example here, where the beginning of the line starts with a node and the line also ends with a node, but in between all the things that change direction in the line, shown by the pinkish dots on the line, are called vertices, or one of them is called a vertex. Lines in GIS are not curved. They're simply made up of a series of short straight line segments so that they appear curved when we're zoomed far enough out on them. A polygon is similar to a line, except the node that it begins with and the node that it ends with is the same node. So it's just defined by a number of vertices and one node that marks both the beginning and the ending of the polygon. So it's a closed set of line segments. This just shows an example here. We can think of these x and y coordinates as being on a piece of graph paper with the x-axis horizontal and the y-axis vertical. And then if we're trying to map something like that little map on the right-hand side, showing some roads and a lake and some houses, we could just represent each of those by either a point, line, or polygon. Perhaps a point for the house, a line for the road, and a polygon for the lake because we want to include the entire outline of the lake. So these vector data models are good for things that have very sharp edges and that we're able to easily define on a map. Another thing to remember about GIS data is that it's not just the drawings that we see on the map that are important. Each one of those features, like the points 1 through 5 in the top example there, is associated with an attribute table. And an attribute table is sort of like an Excel spreadsheet, except that each feature on the map, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, would represent a different row in the attribute table. And then all of the columns in the attribute table can be any attribute or any sort of feature or any sort of thing associated with that feature, such as in this case how high the tower is, or what the name of the tower is, or what format of music the different radio towers play in this area. The same is true for lines. Each one of those separate lines in the middle would represent a different row in the attribute table, and in this case, each of those attributes just has one. Each of those features just has one attribute, which is the name of the river. In the bottom example, once again, each of the polygons a separate feature, so they each get their own row in the attribute table, and then each of the columns would represent a different attribute or some information associated with that feature. The raster data model is very different. With the raster data model, we just have a series of pixels. So it's sort of like a piece of graph paper, or if you've ever zoomed in on a picture far enough, you just see a bunch of little squares. Each one of those is called a pixel or a grid cell. And in the case of raster data, each one of those grid cells has one value associated with it. So each pixel or grid cell has one value. And then as we start putting all those pixels together into a bigger grid, we can start seeing some patterns. In this case, it's a land use map, which is showing where different types of land covers are, such as grasslands and Douglas fir trees.